This is LSAT PrepTest 132, Section 2, Passage 1, about custom-made medical illustrations in personal injury cases. It's a law passage. The author is defending the illustrations, full stop. Every critic gets a turn to make their case, and the author takes away their arguments in turn. That's the whole passage. Now, paragraph 1 is just background. Courts have allowed custom medical illustrations for a while, but there's a fight about where they belong. The first critics showing up here are people who say that textbook illustrations work fine for most injuries. And they make a pretty fair sounding point that textbooks cover things like fractures and whiplash, but then they carve out an exception for unusual injuries. And so the exception they're giving here quietly weakens their own argument before the author even gets in. Then paragraph 2, you got to slow down. The second line of attack comes in saying that custom illustrations are basically propaganda. They're made to help one side win, not to actually show the truth. And even some lawyers agree with this. They think illustrators are just hired guns replacing expert testimony with pretty pictures. And the author says, first, a shady illustration still can't get into evidence unless a medical expert shows up to confirm it's accurate. And so we've got a safeguard there. And then the author flat out calls the worry a mistake. They say it is a mistake flat out. And they're telling you the author's pretty confident. They're just saying it's not somewhat overstated. Then paragraph 3, we get into the more subtle criticism, saying that people say custom illustrations distort the facts with color, emphasis, and exaggeration, even when they're technically accurate. And the author gives a good counter here. They're saying that professional illustrators actually go out of their way to avoid inflammatory content. Sometimes they skip color, they strip out details sometimes, and the author contrasts custom illustrations with textbook ones. Textbooks are overloaded with detail because they're built for medical students. In contrast, custom illustrations cut out everything that doesn't matter for the specific case. And you could bet they're going to have questions about this. Then paragraph 4 closes things out. Custom illustrations come from real medical data like x-rays, CT scans, and actual records. They show things that words can't show. And then the last piece of defense here is that the expert testimony is full of jargon, but judges and juries aren't doctors. They need visual help to understand what happened to somebody's body. So the illustrations translate expertise in a way they can understand. Now, the key move here is that the author never gives an inch. There are 3 separate criticisms in 3 different paragraphs, and each one gets dismantled bit by bit. So it's a consistent pattern that you could predict what's going to come in each subsequent paragraph based on what came before. The author here fully supports custom-made medical illustrations in court. The trap here is picking any answer that suggests the author is cautious or conflicted or only partially convinced. Nothing in this passage supports that. Every objection that comes up gets a direct rebuttal, and the author's only getting more confident as the passage goes on. Now, before you touch the questions, you want to check yourself on these 3 things. First, what is the actual difference between textbook illustrations and custom ones? Not just what they look like, but why they serve different purposes. Second, why does the author think the hired gun criticism falls apart? And third, what problem in the courtroom does the author think these illustrations solve that nothing else can?